reply. There were a couple of emails I think I forgot to reply. Sorry for this. About you missing the class and asking what you should do. You should just watch the videos if they are available. Otherwise, read the. If you miss, you don't have to let me know why you missed it. As long as you don't miss more than 6 classes, it's your responsibility to keep up with the classes. So you don't have to tell me. I think some lectures require here that you tell them, but you don't have to let me know if you missed the lecture. You just log on the blackboard, make sure that you read and prepare for the next class. That's it. You don't have to email me and let me know. It's just waste of your time as well, just trying to email me and telling me why you were late or why you missed it. But FA notices are really bad, so do not miss it. A student today I met says, "Can you tell registry some excuse or reasons that helps me to remove 2 absences?" I was like, "Why?" "Because I got an A from your course." Now he initially didn't want to do this. Basically, he thought he would get B or C, but he ended up getting A. Now he regrets that he missed extra 2 classes. So it's just he lost that A. Basically, his hard work is just wasted for missing this 2 extra classes. So he ended up missing, I think, 9 classes or 8 maybe. I think 8. So he wanted me to tell the registrar that it was my fault that I entered him absent when he was he was present in the class. It's not possible. So you keep up with the list of absences you have. You might have. And another student was doing, like, he said he missed 6 classes and he said he wouldn't miss any more. It was back in November last year, but he ended up missing extra 2 because it was beyond his control. Like, certain things happened during that remaining time, and he ended up getting FA as well. I don't know what to mark you, but so do not assume that you just come to that threshold and you don't miss anything. It's beyond the control. All right, so let's look at how demand and supply interacts, or in other words, how agents in the economy interact with each other in the market to help derive the market prices. In other words, equilibrium prices. Agents or people in the market negotiate with each other, and these prices are negotiated on a continuous basis, yeah? And these prices will be equilibrium price in the market, negotiated prices. That's free market concept, basically. In many cases, however, I just make a deviation here, the prices are fixed. You buy what is you buy at the price on the shelf, right? You do not negotiate with supermarkets. However, we expect supermarkets to price competitively rather than monopolistically, right? You have read about these supermarkets fighting with each other over prices. And this is called price wars between supermarkets. They tend to check each other's prices and offer competitive prices. So we expect the supermarket prices to be equilibrium prices as well. However, in many cases, they may not be equilibrium prices. So the bread you buy, milk you buy, is most likely equilibrium price. Most likely. These are essential. But certain goods, electrical goods, electronics basically, or clothing may not be equilibrium prices. Because if you look at them, they are usually certain price ranges there. I mean, they're priced at certain price ranges. So a coat may always be £69.99, always £70, always. And you always see heavily discounted prices in the end, clearance prices, yeah? So because of supply surplus here in this case, because of high prices. So whenever you see a surplus in the market or a shortage, we are probably away from the equilibrium price. And you will see it in a minute in theory how it looks. So a market is a place where buyers and sellers come together and then trade at equilibrium price. That's what we expect in a free market economy. Now, let's look at a case or an example where there is an equilibrium price and how demand and supply behaves. So the first column shows us the prices in the market. Second column shows us the total market demand, and then last column is total supply in the market. At £20, market demand is 700,000 kilograms, or 700 tons, I think. And you have total market supply at that price, 100,000. So there is, shortage of potatoes. This is market for potatoes, continuing from before. So the shortage is 700 minus 100. 600 tons of potatoes. There is a shortage at low prices. As we increase the prices, we see that the demand declines, but supply increases. So it makes sense, right? At high prices, farmers are happy to supply more, willing to supply more. Right. And then at 100 pounds per kilogram, for example, or pence per kilogram, there is a surplus in the market of potatoes because demand is only 100 tons, but the supply is 700 tons. So the difference is basically surplus. But right in the middle lies the equilibrium price. At that point, demand is equal to supply, 350, 350. Yeah? That's an equilibrium quantity at an equilibrium price of 60. Yeah? And it's good to have this in graph and then analyze it in graph. So let's have a look at the graph. When you graph this potatoes, demand and supply for potatoes, you will see that equilibrium price is at C, point C. But let's say price in the market now is 40, not 60. At 40 pence, supply is naturally low. Yeah, it's a low price, so farmers do not want to sell at that price. So you have 200 tons of potatoes in the market. But the demand is high because it's low price. There's a huge demand. With low prices, we can expect demand to grow. But because there is now shortage of potatoes in the market, what happens to the prices? They start rising. Yeah? Suppliers will start increasing the prices, or we can expect the consumers to start bidding up the prices because there is a shortage of certain goods that are necessity. For example, I need it, so I would increase the price, my price that I want to pay. So consumers and suppliers in the end increase the prices because it's mutually beneficial, right? Even if it's a higher price, I would like to buy it because there is not enough of it. At the same time, supplier wants to sell it because there's not enough of it, so they would like to sell it at the high price. So the price goes up, and there will be movement along the curve from B's to C, right? So we will reach the equilibrium. The point at C is a attracting point, equilibrium point. Now, how about now price of potato being 80? It's a huge increase from what we had at low price, 40. So at that price, we can expect the demand to be very low, very expensive potatoes. But at that price, we expect the suppliers to be willing to supply more to the market. But once they do this, the difference between the 2 points is a surplus. So suppliers end up supplying more. But because there is a lot of potato now in the market, there is less demand as well at that price. Producers start reducing the price because they aren't able to sell at the high price, and obviously consumers are not buying as well. So the point we in the end achieve is the point at 60 and point at that QE, which is 350. Now, this was graphical solution. Now, let's do some exercise here, algebraic solution. Assume that this demand function is for potato, 600 minus 50p. And supply function is minus 400 plus 50p. At what price and quantity do you reach equilibrium? It's a very easy question, I guess. Yeah? But we had a little trouble with the morning class. So let's see how many of you can solve this or how many you cannot solve. How many of you cannot solve this, guys? Does anyone not know how to solve this? You? Okay, that's good. One. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yeah, that's good. Let me know, because I could easily skip this with a short explanation otherwise. But let others who know how to solve it first in the next 2 minutes. Then I'll show you myself. So please find equilibrium price and quantity for this product. Done it? What's the equilibrium price here? 10. And quantity? 100? Okay. Did everyone get the same thing, or has no different number? Okay, you didn't do it. Different number, the same. Different figures. Okay, I think we can try now together this thing. So I've just copied this while you were doing. So if you guys who said you don't know how to do it, take a look, please. If you plot these two functions on xy plane, assuming the quantity is in the x-axis, the quantity, and then price on the y. Strange. I am moving it, but sorry, let me do this. Maybe I have to exit this. End slide. Now, when markets are in equilibrium, there is always some sort of a shock to the market, supply or market demand. So let's look at the case where what happens to the equilibrium point when there is a change in demand curve. There is something happened, like the determinants of demand changed, like the income changed while we are in equilibrium, or substitutes become cheaper or more expensive. So what happens to the equilibrium point in these cases? Then let's look at an example. So look at this example. Initial equilibrium is point G, at which point we have equilibrium quantity QE1 and price PE1. Now let's assume that a variable, one of the determinants of demand, changed, and there is a shift to the right of demand curve. So this could possibly be substitute prices are higher now, so that those who are consuming substitutes started buying the products, these products. So there's more demand now for at the given price. Now notice that the quantity point G is not the equilibrium point anymore. Yeah, because that's an old demand curve before the change. Now at that point, however, old equilibrium price, we now expect to have higher demand. So the point H is the new demand point at the price. It's not the equilibrium point. But notice that this creates what? What does this create? Look at this price, PE1, at the old equilibrium price. Point Q gives us QE1, but point H gives us a higher quantity, yeah? So notice that we are now looking at this point here, this point. This point is higher than the quantity, original quantity. So there is a shortage of this product in the market, right? There's a shortage of this product in the market because quantity supplied, so the point on the supply curve is G, point on the point on D corresponding to this price is H. So there is a shortage of this product. The shortages usually push the prices up, right? So there is a movement along the supply curve as a result. Quantity demanded increases, and we have a new equilibrium price, point I, and a new equilibrium quantity as well. Is this clear now? With a change in demand, demand curve shifts to the right, changing the equilibrium point. Is this clear? Yes? No? So that's the new equilibrium point here for us. Shortages induce the producers to produce more at a high price. And eventually prices rise up to a point where demand meets supply, they equate, and the prices then stay there. So the only price that's stable is equilibrium price. Beyond equilibrium prices, the prices will not stay the same. They will change until we reach the equilibrium. Yeah, it's a point. Equilibrium point is like a magnet. It attracts always, yeah, other points towards itself. And now there could also be movement along the demand curve, but supply curve may shift. Let's start with an initial point G again. In this case, let's assume that one of the factors that affect supply of a good takes place. So changes, I should say changes. Change takes place otherwise. So in that case, let's say in this case it's a leftward shift of supply curve. Leftward shift of supply curve. What could possibly cause the left shift of supply? What factor could possibly cause it to shift left? Let's say this is a potato market. Yeah.
Natural shocks.
Natural shocks, yeah. So they could be droughts, seasons of drought, yeah. Sudden, we could have a lot of rain and suddenly we don't have any rain. Especially in this country, rain is important because of hillsides where it is hard to bring up water up, yeah. So, yeah, it could be natural shocks to the harvest. And as a result, there could be less supply to the market this year. Or cost of production, somebody just mentioned, could be higher. So, supply will decline as a result. So this shift is a result of other factors, not the price again. Yeah. In this case, again, we have the old equilibrium point G. Now because of supply shifted to the left, what do we have again? At the original price, we have higher demand, QE1, and the supply is lower. Because of shortages, prices again rise up to a point, K. And at that point, we will have quantity demanded equal to quantity supplied. So that's a new equilibrium point now. Clear how equilibrium points change and move over time? Okay. Notice that all of these changes that we had, right, that we discussed earlier, a few minutes ago, shift in demand, shift in supply, change in prices, are due to incentives. Shortages usually imply producers could charge high prices. The incentive for them to charge high price is the potential for high profits, right? So it's a free market concept again. Concept of free market kicks in. In command economies, incentives do not affect the production amount of supplies. It won't affect. If there is a shortage, what happens is that in the command economies, government rations the supply among the population. So it always gives equal proportions to everyone. In a free market, if there is shortage, some parts of society, some sections of society may be able to afford at high prices, but others are not able to. But eventually, with the high prices for goods, supplies increase, bringing up the equilibrium price and quantity. So everyone will benefit from it, right? Okay, so incentives matter in this case. But incentives do not necessarily, following the incentives do not necessarily give us the socially optimal results. Because in some cases, you could expect the profiteering suppliers or producers, induced by greed, sell at high prices for their own benefits, right? We could see the financial crisis occurs because of greed as well. That's an example. And in many cases, if you watch the news, a lot of news channels blame the bankers, or just at least implied that bankers were responsible for what? For the financial crisis, because they followed the greed and incentives. Incentive for them to trade and take high risks was that if they do so, they would make more profit. And then when they make more profit, they would be paid commission, or bonuses. So these bonuses basically induced them to trade, to take risky positions. And in the end, the crash of financial markets implied crash of credit markets, basically. So credit wasn't enough in the end for businesses. Okay. Incentives do not necessarily lead to socially optimal points, like the one that we saw. You see, we are easily explaining that the equilibrium price is achieved if there is a shortage because there's an incentive to produce more, given that the profits are higher. Prices could be increased, yeah? But we may not end up being at point K, yeah? And kind of efforts to profit from the given situation may be driven by greed, and as a result we will have socially suboptimal outcomes. Okay, so that's one thing. Next is, how do we identify the position of demand and supply curves? How do we know that they really cross at that point? They shift because of these factors. In some cases, a factor that affecting demand may also affect supply as well. And I'll give you an example here. So let's look at this case now. Originally S1 shifts now to S2. And we know the factors, what they are. Yeah, these are production costs, alternative profitable goods become available, natural shocks, for example, to the supply of goods, and so on and so forth. So this could push the supply to the left, depending on the nature of effect, right? The trouble is, in reality, it's very hard to know where the supply curve is because of natural resource curves. Yeah. So when you try to apply this theoretical concepts to the real world examples, it will become harder to identify how this supply curve moved. Did it move from A to B, or it moved from A to C, which is a different point? This becomes harder. So identifying these points or curves would be very difficult. Now, there could also be a case where shift in demand occurs at the same time as a result of factors that affect supply. You know, one of the factors that affect supply curves is the profitability of alternative products. Suppliers may switch if the profitability of alternative product is higher. But it could as well be a substitute product, right? So that could shift the demand as well. So it will be very difficult to identify in reality where the shifts are and where the equilibrium price and quantities moved, right? In theory, however, we are always able to find it. It's a theoretical concept, right? So in the exam, you will begin theoretical aspects of it, not practical. So focus on more theory rather than saying it's difficult to identify where the supply curve and where the equilibrium point is after the shock. You have to identify properly using the theory what is expected from you is usually theory, not the practical aspects at this point. Yeah. So this is just a deviation, slight deviation, to tell you that identifying supply and demand curves after shocks is not easy. And it's a problem of economics. We usually have shocks that affect both of them at the same time. But we may assume that shocks that affect supply is always affecting supply, not demand. But it is possible that they could affect both of them. Okay, next now. A very quick case study of housing market and how housing supply causes house prices change over time. Have you kind of studied the case study on financial crisis? Any case studies on financial crisis, recent ones? No? No one is taking finance class? Yeah, you? Some of you, yeah? Okay, you will study a case study on financial crisis. And personally, what do you think recent financial crisis was caused by? What affected, what made this happen? What was the reason for financial crisis we had in 2008? Who? Okay. The banks were giving out too much loans. When? Before that time, basically. Yeah, it's a good underlying the fundamental cause of financial crisis was the housing market bubble. There was a bubble in housing market. When we say bubble, that's when prices increase continuously, regardless of the fundamentals. Prices were rising and rising, and bankers thought giving out mortgage now is a chance to earn more money, basically. Like these bankers who usually, if you apply for mortgage with, even if as someone, if a person applies for mortgage, for example, who works for McDonald's, and another family member works for a low-paid job as well, if their combined wages just enough just to pay interest payments plus some savings can be made, then they were able to obtain housing mortgages. Traditionally, mortgages were provided to those people who are able to pay interest payments, plus they are able to save large amounts. But towards 2000, so between 2000 and 2006 and 7, the bankers mortgage providers basically provided mortgages to subprime borrowers. These were people who earned low. They had earned low incomes. Eventually, they were unable to keep up the payments, and their houses were foreclosed. What do you call this in Britain when the house is taken away by the bank? No? Until you repay all your mortgage payments and installments, until you repay all the installments, basically, make all the installments. The house is bank's house. It's not your house, in other words, right? You actually have a contract with the bank that you pay all payments, you meet all the obligations. If not, then the house will be retained by the bank. So there's a term for foreclosing. Term for this. I don't see it anyway. Okay, let's go on to this. So I was going to give you a slight background on financial crisis. But anyway, so let's look at this now. Notice that this is the housing price inflation. UK house price inflation. You have the vertical axis where the percentage change in prices are given. So these are average percentage change in prices. And then horizontal axis is where the timeline is depicted. The blue bars show you quarterly price changes. These are positive changes. So prices in this period are increasing. Notice that the price increases are very severe in this period. In 1988 and the period up to 1990s. Huge changes in prices. What do you think made these prices change so volatile, changes to be so volatile? What do you think? What makes the prices change usually? We talked about them a bit earlier. Can you relate this to the market, the housing market? So most likely the income is rising, yeah? Expectations, so that's one thing. And Margaret Thatcher made it a policy, or I think most likely the campaign manifesto to give every British, but this is UK market, every British family a house. That means there will be high demand for housing. And interest rate, cost of mortgage was low in this period. As a result, because demand is high, but supply not as high, the prices started rising. So there was a shortage of mortgage. That's when the prices rise. Remember that we looked at earlier in the graphs. If there is a shortage, prices usually rise. That's the case in 80s. Suddenly, prices started going down. So red bars here in this case, in the early 90s, imply prices are declining at these rates. Very quick collapse, very fast collapse in housing market. That's when demand for housing stock is dying or declined. Yeah. And then again, you see, it's very hard to tell the equilibrium point in this market. It's very fluid, it's very liquid. Prices change every quarter in this case, even every month here. When there's a bubble, prices even change every day basically. Yeah? Equilibrium price is moving, in other words, shifting. There's no fixed equilibrium price. So factors that affect housing market basically. Income, availability of credit, cost of credit, then aim, expectations, and things like this, and they are moving the prices. So we could see this we could see this from a smaller market's point of view as well. Market for potatoes, prices always rise and go up and go down depending on the factors affecting them. Yeah. So the equilibrium points that we studied are theoretical cases, but in reality, over time, equilibrium point will not stay fixed. It will move up and down. So we will always look at an equilibrium point within a short run. In the long run, prices change, as this graph shows us. Okay. Right. So these were the factors that we looked at. Some of you guys mentioned by you. So, and also there was a speculation as well, especially towards the 2008, the housing market speculation. The credit was so cheap towards 2008. There was huge demand. And as a result, when there is huge demand, prices rise, creating shortages. There is another case study from stock markets, but I will skip this. It is time consuming. Rather, we will focus on theoretical cases, which are more important. I'll leave it to you to have a look at. It just discusses as well again factors that influence stock prices and how availability of shares in the market affect. So Let's look at supply and demand again from a theoretical perspective, and we look at the control of prices now. In many markets, prices, not many, in few markets in the UK, but outside the UK and Europe and the West in general, the markets are not usually controlled. Prices are not imposed. So government plays a very minimal role. But even in Britain, we see price controls. So can you give an example of a price control by government? Yes?
Tariffs.
Sorry?
Tariffs.
Tariffs. Let's not think about international economy, but that's a good point. So by imposing tariffs, you can reduce the supply, yeah. Or VAT, yeah, that's one thing, yeah. Taxing, yes. Taxes. Petrol prices, okay. But we're looking at real fixing of the prices. Fixing the prices. Rather than just imposing through some sort of policy tool like tax or something, yes? Yes, there could be a maximum price floor or minimum price, yeah, ceilings. So what market there could be? What market there?
Maximum university, they can't go above 9,000.
Yes, tuition fees, right? Price floors usually are minimum prices. So not necessarily university. It's the next one, price ceilings. Yeah, we can think of. Now, minimum price to charge is called price floor. I'll give you an example of that industry. Now, this could be prices on agricultural products to help farmers to impose a minimum price to sell at. How many of you guys have seen, or maybe you're seeing them now as well? If you're European, coming from Europe, you know it better than people living in the UK. In Belgium, there's a square. I don't know what it's called, but it is European Commission building. This is where the European Commission building is located. There's a big square. Every now and then, I see farmers dumping their harvest into that square, protesting the EU Commission. Have you seen these cases? No. You're not watching the news. This is a case of price control that farmers want. Farmers want EU to regulate the prices. They want a minimum price imposed for their products. Otherwise, they're saying it's better to dump. It's profitable for us to dump the goods that we produce rather than sell at low prices. That's why they dump them into the square. And in some cases in the UK, you may have seen several cows and sheep in the supermarkets. Farmers walking with the cows and sheep. There was one recently. A farmer brought his several cows into Asda, and then when the BBC correspondent asked, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "I am raising awareness that the supermarkets are paying us very low price for the milk. That's why I want to raise awareness among the customers." So they are protesting. So the minimum prices are imposed in some cases to help protect certain industries like farming and agricultural, because prices for these goods are usually very low, and there's always inputs coming in from outside at even lower prices. Local producers are not able to make profit. So equilibrium price may not be good for the producers in local market. So they would like an price regulations, price controls. These are called minimum price or price floors. Is this socially optimal, controlling the prices? It doesn't look like, does it? Because at equilibrium price, demand and supply is equal. Demand and supply quantities are equal, so there is no shortage of surplus. But when the prices are imposed, like minimum price is imposed, which is a high price, there is a low demand, high supply. It creates a surplus in the market, glut in the market. So what do suppliers do? They dump their products then. So it's a waste of, it creates the wastage, yeah, of these products. So it's not socially optimal, right? Or is it? What do you think? It doesn't appear. However, at the same time, if the suppliers trade at the equilibrium prices, they may not benefit as well. Okay, how about imposing ceilings, price ceilings? Can you give an example where there is a price ceiling on products? Example of a market? Sorry?
Universities.
Universities, yeah? Maximum that universities can charge is a good example. Or pharmaceuticals, maximum they can charge is 850 now, yeah? But they could produce them at very high prices as well. Certain goods, certain medicines are very expensive to make. But because of the price control by government, there's a maximum price that the pharmacies can charge. They have to sell at that price. Well, obviously, this is for the benefit of society to impose price ceilings. But it mightn't be a good idea at the same time. Notice what happens. Original equilibrium price is PE, at which point there is no supply shortage or surplus. But imposing maximum price may imply that the quantity supplied is much less than quantity demanded. That creates this situation of shortage. Not everyone can have their hand on the goods. So given the shortages, there could possibly be underground economy as well. That's because in some markets, dealers may buy at the imposed low prices, maximum prices, and then sell in the underground markets as well. Back in the 90s, in Eastern bloc of Soviet Union, early 90s, before the collapse of Berlin Wall and all this integration, the prices were imposed by the government. And the equilibrium price is different, but then companies have to produce at very low price, sell at very low prices, at loss basically. And there was underground market for all products flourishing, because dealers would buy at shop prices and sell in the market at high prices. So it creates another market, parallel market to the official market usually. So it's not necessarily a nice idea to impose regulation, price controls, because then you have to deal with shortages. One example is a rationing case, right? By imposing maximum prices that companies can charge, you're dealing with shortages. And then how to deal with them? Well, the one way is the rationing. Rationing is when you give everyone equal amounts. Yeah, even if someone doesn't need as much, they will get that amount basically. Yeah, so they sell them in the underground economy. Shadow markets basically. Right. Do we still have time? How many minutes do you have? About 15 minutes? Okay. So this graph shows the underground market. So price ceiling implies there is a shortage. That implies, well, dealers will buy up at the low price, imposed price, and then sell the goods at a high price on the underground market. And the revenue they make is the difference between the price they pay and price they charge the people. Yeah? This is a quick introduction to disequilibrium basically. So we know how equilibrium is achieved. It's equilibrium point is an attracting point. However, there's always government intervention here and there. You could see very few times, very few occasions in the UK West, but outside the West, for example, in China, there's a huge government control. The government imposes prices at which firms can sell their goods, and there's a limit. There's also minimum price that cigarettes could be sold in other countries. So I don't know if this is the case in the UK. I think most likely cigarette taxes are higher here rather than prices are imposed. But in other countries, cigarette prices have price floors. Yeah, the minimum they could charge. So this has to be high price. So that creates the underground economy. So the dealers buy at low price and sell at even at different prices, not equilibrium prices. And most likely result of underground economy is when you have imposed price ceiling, the maximum that can be charged. In that case, dealers, those people who you may have seen these cases here, these instances as well in your real life as well. You could see a number of times people would buy up at low price and selling on eBay at very high prices. This is a case of underground economy. So official releases are bought by dealers very quickly at low prices because there is no available product available at the official prices. There's a shortage of the goods, and then the dealers sell them online at a very high price. So they benefit. The difference between the price they pay and the price they charge on internet is the revenue they make. So this is an underground economy, and this most likely will not be taxed because selling on eBay doesn't require taxes. Gumtree doesn't require tax payments, do they? So this is socially suboptimal. One is that the government loses taxes. Second is that the prices rise up, having this price control, prices imposed. Okay. Anyway, we talked about the market prices being naturally equilibrating because of shortages and surpluses. But it is not usually the case. Usually prices are fixed. Prices are fixed, and most of the prices are fixed. Especially the necessities are usually fixed. But certain necessities like milk, bread, these prices are offered, the goods are offered at competitive prices. So you can expect these prices to be a result of equilibrium prices. But goods like the electronics, clothes, young fashion especially, the prices are naturally higher because the young people usually buy because of trend. But necessities are usually result of necessity prices. Goods that are necessity, their prices are usually result of equilibrium in the market. But in many cases, you could see the prices are fixed, even consumer goods like large price tag goods. This could include durables as well, not necessarily. Okay, this is the end of the lecture, but we'll have about 10 minutes. Let me do this. And